Okay, so a lot of my students basically jump into CLI generation first, so there's no output and or no web output, and that makes a lot of sense if you want to do or achieve something. So we're going to basically look at Inquirer, which is a pretty famous little helper tool to get the input of the console back into into a very workable format. So first thing I'm going to do here, so I created an index.js. As you can see, it's pretty empty. So what we're going to do to build our first CLI tool is, first of all, we probably going to do npm install inquirer. Let's get that going for us quickly. Okay. Got that. All right. And then I can basically say, okay, let's include that now. So the principle of inquire is pretty simple. So let's just think of what we could potentially do. So what I want to do is probably I want to create a JSON file that I'm going to call what could we basically maintain here? Let's call it tasks. Okay, to make this pretty simple. And so what we're going to do here is this JSON is going to be an array consisting of the following things. Here's the title, and the title is do something, and maybe it is done false. Okay, so that's basically going to be the format of our little task app that we're going to build. And so in order to read that in, well, actually how we're going to do it is with fs, pretty simple, right? So the file read system. So we're going to say require, and I don't seem to have my node support on, so let me quickly change that. Where are we here? Let's tell it it's a node. We're building node. Okay. And here we get the typos out. Inquirer. Why does this not work? Inquirer. There we go. So it's not listed in the package JSON. No, because we don't have a package JSON. Okay, fair enough. So that's going to be the file system. Yeah, and just to be clean, sorry, but I quickly want to have all of this is okay for now. What I want to do here, so just to clean this up a little bit, what we should have done here in the dependencies, oh, and it actually understands that. Okay, fair enough, so we can do that afterwards. Okay, so the file read system, and so the first thing I'm probably going to do is I'm going to get my JSON out, right? And so I'm going to call this tasks, and that is fs write file, and I'm going to do this synchronously, and basically going to say, okay, that's in the same folder, and it's tasks.json. And UTF-8. Okay, so let me first do the following. Let's actually see if we can read this, basically. And I do so by running node index. And it says undefined. Okay, tasks.json. And I write this synchronously. tasks.json, and we're in index.json. Okay, I'm actually not sure why that's the case. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you don't like that. Let's do it like this then. Nope. I'm not sure why that's the case. Oh, what is happening here? Did I say right? Okay, of course I want to read that. And now I can't, yeah, that doesn't work anymore. Okay, let me quickly get into my local history and get this done here again. Okay, so that was a mistake. Obviously what I wanted to do is to read the file, not to write to the file. Sorry about that. And so that should leave us basically with this. Now that's still a string, don't forget that. So we want to probably parse this, but for now we're good with this kind of approach. So what we do, or actually let's actually do this and get this into JSON format. So you don't really see that, but what we want to make sure is that, yeah, that this is actually something that we understand, as now we transferred it into an array, so we should be good. So in our inquirer, we have a prompt function that's actually going to ask us questions. Now the question that I wanted here, basically want to define this as a as an array. Okay, and here I'm going to have a callback answers that we're going to end up working with. So my questions in that case would be, and every question has a particular name. That's what is going to be generated as an object, as a property in the answers object. So here in that case, my name would be, let's call it action. And then the type is going to be inputted. That's a default value. You don't have to do this, just so you understand what's happening. And then I basically have a message. And you can read all of this on the inquirer documentation. So that's pretty straightforward. And the message is going to be, what do you want to do? And actually, now that I think of it, this should probably be a type list, and we're going to have choices, and those choices are going to be show tasks or add task. Okay, so the only thing I'm going to do here for now is, again, I'm going to log the answer so we see what's going on. Fair enough. So if we run this, then you can see down here, I hope that's clearly visible, I have the option of to show a task or to add a task. So now let's basically do show task, and nothing happens. Why don't I see the answers? Because that's not how it works, right? This is the passing for the mock, I suppose. Come on. Quickly try this out again. Should probably look at the documentation quickly, but let's just try this out. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so now you can see basically I get the action show tasks. Do you see that? And that's basically what I'm going to start working with. So here's the idea, okay? And on a high level, what we're going to do is basically we're either going to list the tasks now or add a task in the first step. So what we're going to do here is say, okay, so if answers and then by name, so it's called, we call that action, right? Equals show tasks, then do the following and say console.table tasks. Okay. Now, what we want to do if somebody adds a task is, of course, something else. So I'm going to add here to my question array. And I'm going to say name, just call this new. And type is then, in that case, input. Again, this is default. You don't really have to write this. And message is, what is your new task? Okay. And so I don't want this to just come up at any given point in time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to formulate a when, and that's going to be a function that receives the answers. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is basically I'm going to say return. So this is either true or false. It's just like you know, like if you use a mapping function or a filter function or whatever. And I'm basically going to say, well, so this is when answers.actions no, that's it. Answers.action equals add task. Okay, so now this will only be asked if that was our choice. Okay, so that already means that we're not in this context, but we're in the else here. And what I can do now, right, is basically say, okay, so if this has been the case, then what I want to do is I want to basically add it to the tasks, right? So I'm going to say, okay, tasks dot push. I'm going to create an object here that's going to have title, and that's going to be answers dot and what do we call this? New, and done is false. Okay, so now it thinks it's undeclared, but it will be, so don't worry about that. That's what I'm going to do. Then what I'm going to do then is I'm going to actually write this to file. Write file. Okay, so that will be the path, and it's the same thing that we already had before. So that's the, actually let's even make this easier here and say, okay, const JSON path equals, and then we're gonna do this one so we can maintain this easier, and then use that in here. Make this a little bit smaller, and in here. And what I want to do here is, oops, the JSON stringify. So now I'm going to do the opposite operation and say tasks. Okay. Why is this argument types do not match parameters? Quickly see how the declaration works. Not like I hoped for. It's probably, do I need this one as well? No, that's the callback. Okay, I'm going to do this synchronously because we can wait for that. That doesn't bother us. Then I do this, and then so the only thing that I probably want to do now is I want to jump back into the top, right? So let's just assume that we declare this as a run function. Okay, and we're gonna plop all of that in here. all of the above in here, right? And the only thing that we're going to do is here we're basically going to say run. And in general, what we're going to do is we're going to also run. Okay, so let's try this out again. So I've got my two options. So I have my show tasks. Let's try that one out. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Then let's do add task. What's your new task? Call mom. Show tasks, and basically see that we now have a second task that we need to do. So that's all pretty fine. So the last thing that we basically want to do is we want to see whether or not something is done or not. So there are a couple of more things that I probably want to account for, right? So first, let's do the following and say remove task. So let's take care of that, which basically means that here we potentially have another faction here, right? So instead of this, let's actually copy this and say else if, and here we're going to say answers dot action equals remove task. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add another when function here. And why are we doing that? Because, oops, that was copied clumsily. So here, remove. And basically what we're going to say here is type input and what is your new task? No. The question here is which task do you want to remove? Okay, and this is basically when answers to the action is remove task. Okay, that's when we want to ask this. And here we also want to have a list, and now it's going to get a little bit interesting because the choices is something that is going to be dynamic depending on how many tasks exists, right? So I can declare this as a function, right? And can say choices is function that basically returns let's make this super simple, okay? Let IDs, let's declare this as an empty array here basically, and then I simply say tasks that or for let's do it like this, for I equals 0, I smaller tasks dot length plus 1, I plus plus, oops, right, and then IDs push, and I'm going to say ID, let's not even do that. Task ID do you want to remove? Yeah, we're just going to, let's keep it as simple as possible for now. Just going to do this, and here at the end of the day I'm going to say return IDs. Okay, so let's try that out. Also, what we want to probably do here in this scenario, we probably also want to run this again. Okay, so let's try it out. So first of all, we're going to look at that, and then we see, okay, we have do something and call mom. Now I want to remove it. So which one do you want to remove? Oh, and there's a logical error here. Because task length, yeah, because I don't need that one. That's why. So let's do that again. So first we want to show the task, then we want to remove a task, and then we say, okay, I want to remove that one. Okay, so in this case nothing's happens because we're now in here, right? So what we want to do here is actually relatively simple. So the next thing that we're probably going to do here is we're going to create a second function. Oops. Create a second function here, and that is going to be write tasks or write to file. Okay, so the only thing we're going to do here is basically going to move this one over. Oops. So I have that cleaned up, and then here I'm going to say write to file. So if we remove a task, we probably want to do the same. We already know that. What we don't know yet is, and we also want to run after the fact. And what we do want to do now is probably say like, okay, let's make sure that we're actually removing the you know, like and we get conveniently, we get exactly the position in, right? So what we're going to here is to say, okay, so what we actually want to do is we want to splice the task, and it's going to be basically answers remove. One. Okay, so let's check that out. Let's first show remove task 1, and then show task, and you can see I only have this left, right? So what we could probably do at this point is we could probably kind of like understand that, well, probably the show task is something that I want to do anyway, so for that reason, or no, let's get our basic functionality done first. So we can now show tasks, we can add tasks, we can remove tasks. Now the only thing that we require now is to set a task done, right? Now what I can do here is I'm going to simplify that and say which task. Okay, and here I'm going to say, well, instead of calling this remove, I'm calling this I'm going to call this dedicated. Okay, so here I now require dedicated in order to make that work. And what I also now is basically I'm going to reuse this functionality here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically copy this over again, and here I'm going to say mark. Alright, I don't even have to do that. You know what? I don't even have to do that. Let's keep this as simple as we can. So here we're going to have the remove task, and here we're going to have mark task completed. Okay, so here we have our if remove, and then basically we do this. So at this point we probably notice that we have a lot of different ifs here. So let's change this to an easier structure. At this point it makes sense to basically, okay, switch by answers.action, right? And then we can basically easily go through this whole thing and say, okay, so our first case is show, oops, that's not how we write show tasks. And basically this is where this happens, right? Got that, and after that we're going to break. So the next case is going to be remove task. and that's going to do this. All right, and also break. And the next case is going to be, what other things do we have here? Add task. In which case, we're going to do this. And then break. And at this point, we already noticed, like, okay, a couple of things seem to be really redundant here. So we can probably just, do this in general, and we will see we can. But let's first finish it up. So we have our show, remove, add, and then we need mark, and then this doesn't make sense, mark as completed. Right, that will be our last case. Where we say, okay, case mark is completed, and that is going to basically be the, oops, what did I do here? Okay, and that's probably going to be, okay, tasks, and then we have the answers dedicated. So that's because then we have the, oh, here in the when we need to change this here. Well, let's do this in a second. Answers dedicated dot done equals true, and then write to file, and then run. Okay, so now we basically have this block completely substituted, and we notice that, okay, wait a second. So worst case scenario, I'm going to use the write to file even though I only show the tasks. But other than that, let's just move this below everything, right? So after here, we're going to break, and then I can remove it here, and here, and this one. Okay, so that's pretty simple. The only thing in my when is that, okay, this is not now the only case where this could happen, right? So mark is completed would also ask this question. So here I can basically say answers action equals mark is completed. Okay, and then we're basically already done. So let's try this out. Let's run it, and actually let's even define a script here where we say, oops, start node index. Okay, so I should be able to, from this moment on, basically simply say, okay, npm start. Okay, now show tasks. Okay, got this. Let's add one. New task is write email. Got it. Let's look at it again. Okay, we got this one. So now we can have mark is completed, which one show task, and you can see this one is now done. And that's basically already it from what we wanted to achieve in this little exercise. So now we have a persistent way. I mean, we used JSON as a database, but basically now we have our first little CLI tool that would do our tasks for us in, well, I mean, it's a little bit clumsy, but let's say about 50 lines of code. And that's all we basically wanted to achieve in this little CLI tutorial. So I hope that gave you some idea of what you can do, and hopefully it gets you started into a little bit more interesting tasks.